This is me navigating a very hard segue back to this topic, which we had pulled up, which is Biden warning of real food shortage risk over Russia's invasion into Ukraine. We've been hearing murmurs about this, but it's very obvious. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. They produce wheat. Russia exports fertilizer. We're no longer able to buy that fertilizer for the most part. The prices are skyrocketing, which means the spring planting season will be limited. And that also means the fall harvest will be severely stunted. So you can expect to see food shortages here and in Europe, and Biden is warning about it.
Yep.
I think there's a couple things to point out. One is that Biden has basically said, what did he say? We're going to disseminate food shortages around the world?
Yeah.
What a ridiculous thing to say.
Sounds like a Biden thing to say.
Yeah.
But, people will be like, what he really meant was we're going to disseminate food around the world. Well, you don't know what he meant. He said he's going to make food shortages worse. The other thing is, this is the direct result of a lack of culture coming from the right. Because politics is downstream from culture, as Andrew Breitbart said.
Yep.
And when you get a 2020 in which every channel, every movie, every media outlet is all screaming Orange Man bad, it lights people up to get out there. And I always bring up the story, man. People I know who have no business in politics. I certainly think they have a right to be. But these are people who couldn't tell you what the Supreme Court was, how many justices it has, or even name a single member of Congress going out and voting. Why? Because their media and their culture tells them what to do. Now we're seeing the ramifications of this. Joe Biden as president is not responsible for every crisis we're dealing with, but he's certainly a bad leader who said he's going to be disseminating food shortages. Now we get to experience those food shortages.
It was a promise.
Because to
That
stop
was.
literal Hitler, you would elect anyone.
Yep.
It looks like the actual quote is, we both talked about how we could increase and disseminate more rapidly food shortages.
It's a great quote.
That's our Biden.
Have you ever
No,
just makes me contemplate time,
Passage of time.
Yes, please.
the passage of
the
time.
passage of time.
Yeah.
Well, just
What is time?
imagine
Are we
guessing this situation 5 years ago. Like, yeah, we're gonna have these food shortages, and the president's gonna go, he's gonna distribute the food shortages, or
Imagine being Donald Trump speaking at a rally and saying, if you vote for Joe Biden, you're going to have your gas prices are going to go way up. The economy is going to be bad.
And you get freaking fact checked and shut down on Facebook for saying it probably at the time.
Yeah, you guys
missing context, they would have said.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I remember this one fact checker, someone quote tweeted me because I talked about Bill Clinton and Epstein's plane, and they fact checked it as false. When you click the fact check, it explained in great detail how I was correct.
Yeah.
It's the most insane thing. They did it to Josh Hawley. PolitiFact did it, where they were like, Josh Hawley says that Judge Jackson was lenient to, let's just say, child abusers, very extreme child abusers, and they were like mostly false. And then you scroll down, it's like, well, it's true. She was lenient to these people. It isn't it isn't out of the ordinary for judges to be
doing
lenient.
it.
And it's like, did he say it wasn't? He just gave a fact. So. Well, this is the reality of where you're at when your cultural institutions are dominated by a cult and by people who are intent on just controlling the system, even if it means burning it to the ground.
Yeah, the institutions in this country were always the real bulwark against state intrusion into our lives, right? You had the states actually created the federal government, so that they're like the ultimate pre-federal institution. You had the church, which was one of the most important institutions in the country. You had other institutions, though. Corporate America, I think probably it's unpleasant to say, but like probably the institution that mattered the most in many ways as a bulwark against state power. You had the family, the ultimate institution, and what the left has done since the 60s is they've infiltrated every one of those institutions. Since the state automatically essentially desires what the left desires, a state, the natural state of a state is to grow its power over the individual, which is a left-wing goal. Since that is the truth, when the left takes over all the institutions that allowed the people to, essentially it solves the collective action problem of the people in defending their rights against the state. Once the institutions are on the left, the institutions immediately essentially become an arm of the state. And you see that with all these fact checkers. I have a soft spot for Facebook. I mean, Daily Wire has been the #1 publisher in the world on Facebook 15 months in a row.
Wow.
We do really well on Facebook. I think Mark Zuckerberg, if you were to talk to him personally, wouldn't see himself as a guy who has taken voices away from so many people. He would see himself as the guy who's given a voice to 1 billion people. Nevertheless, the institution that he's created, because 30,000 people at Facebook all walk in lockstep with the left, they've become an arm of the state. And so instead of corporate America now, it's all the things we've been talking about all night, HR and all these things, instead of corporate America solving the collective issue, the collective action problem of the individual, they actually become a part of the state's power to shut down the individual. And that's why you get these incredibly Orwellian expressions like fact checking. Right. How can you have a fact check that says you are mostly false, that something is mostly false, which is completely true? And what the answer is that missing context or mostly false, the piece that they say was missing or that would have that created the falsehood is just their point of view. Not more information, not more fact, their point of view. Missing context. If I say Joe Biden isn't a good president, they will say fact check, mostly false, missing context. And you'll read the article and they'll say, well, hyperinflation, war overseas, the end of American hegemony, gas prices through the roof, food shortages being disseminated around the globe. But other presidents have been bad.
And they would say